The next few poses will be done in a standing position. Please move slowly and at your own pace. Keep the sturdy chair nearby for balance if needed. If you find that I'm talking faster than you are moving, please take your time and do fewer repetitions. Take a nice deep inhale and exhale. Place the feet about hips width apart and grounded on the floor. Lift the toes and spread them nice and wide, and feel the navel pull gently in towards the spine. Push the toes into the floor and lean forward just a little bit. Feel the muscles that keep you steady. Lean back just a little bit and feel the toes come up. Feel the muscles that keep you steady in this position. Now push all four corners of the feet into the floor. Notice the steadiness of mountain pose. Notice how the steadiness of mountain pose feels. On the next inhale, roll the shoulders towards the ears, back and down so the shoulders are slightly open. Let the palms rest open to the side. Inhale and let the arms rise with the palms facing up. Exhale, bend at the elbows and allow the hands to come down the center line. Sink into the knees just a little. Repeat this again. Inhale, lift the arms with the palms facing up. Allow the hands and face to be relaxed. Continue with this movement at your own pace. Breathe as you move and try to coordinate the breath with the movement. On the next breath, lift the arms back over the head. Fingertips point in, palms face up. Imagine that you have candles in the palms of your hands and you do not want to spill them. Turn the fingertips so they face behind you. The palms remain up. Turn the fingertips to the side and then to the front like an offering, then out to the side walls. Breathe as you move, up to the top with the fingers facing in again, towards one another, and then forwards like an offering, then out to the side walls. Breathe as you move, up to the top with the fingers facing in again. Let's do this rotation one more time. After the second rotation, allow the hands to cascade down by the side and let them rest. Pause for one slow inhale and exhale. One more breath. Inhale, exhale. This next exercise is excellent for strengthening the spine and gently stretching the muscles of the back, front, and sides. Attempt to make the movement easeful and gentle. We will do these movements with various arm positions. The first arm position is the easiest. Please be sure to stay with the one that feels best for your body. We will demonstrate them all. Take the right hand to the waist and then the left. Roll the shoulders open. And on the exhale, lean to the right. Inhale to the center. On the exhale, lean to the left. Inhale back to the center. Roll the shoulders up, back, and down. And on the next inhale, gently pull the navel towards the spine. Pull the shoulder blades softly together. Get a small lift in the chin and feel a sense of lengthening through the front of the body. On the next exhale, begin to fold gently forward. It does not have to be all the way. Bend the knees slightly. Inhale and rise back to a standing position. Open the left arm to the side. Keep the elbow bent. Leave the right hand on the waist. Inhale. Exhale, lean slightly to the right, and then return back to the center. Bring the left hand down to the waist. Lift the right arm. Inhale. Exhale and lengthen to the left. Return to the center. Roll the shoulders open. Gently pull the navel in towards the spine. Pull the shoulder blades softly together. Get a small lift in the chin. Exhale and fold forward halfway. Inhale back to standing. Open the left arm again. Inhale, and on the exhale, lean to the right. Inhale and return back to the center. Place the left hand on the waist. Lift the right arm. Inhale. On the exhale, lean to the left. Inhale and return back to the center. Roll the shoulders open. Lengthen through the front of the body. Slightly pull the shoulder blades together. Get a small lift in the chin. Exhale and fold forward. Knees slightly bent. Inhale and return to standing in mountain pose. Pause for a moment. Inhale and exhale. For this warrior sequence, attempt to keep the movements gentle and relaxed. If you notice that you are struggling, move the feet closer together. Lower the arms or make the movements smaller. This pose is great for strengthening the legs, respiration, and opening the shoulders. Step the left foot forward just a few feet. The back foot points in at a 45-degree angle. The front knee bends and the hips face front if possible. Inhale, open the arms and bend at the elbows. On the exhale, bring the hands and elbows towards each other. Inhale, open the arms and push the heart softly forwards. Relax the shoulders. Exhale, bring the arms together. Inhale, open the arms to where you feel comfortable. Exhale, relax the arms inwards. Inhale, open and expand. Exhale, contract. Inhale, exhale. Bring the hands back down by the side. Return to mountain pose. One breath here. Inhale, exhale. Step the right foot forward. Take a moment, there's no rush. Ground the back foot into the floor. Bend the front knee. When you are ready, open the arms. Inhale. Exhale, bring the hands and elbows towards one another. Inhale, open the arms. This is a relaxed opening in the chest. Exhale, bring the hands and arms towards one another. Inhale, repeat again, creating spaciousness with a full inhale. Exhale, contract and relax the arms slightly. 2 more times at your own pace. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. Let the hands rest down by the side and return back to mountain pose. Pause here for a few breaths.
Welcome back to the 16th online episode of Peacetime, hosted on alternating Sunday mornings by PeacePoint and on alternating Thursday evenings by the IMC Information, with myself, Pratt Nicholas, live streaming from Dhammakaya International Meditation Center in Azusa, California. Today's session will be about an hour and 10 minutes long and will consist of a 25-minute talk and 20 minutes of meditation, finishing up with 25 minutes of conclusion, answers to viewer questions submitted in advance, and news updates. Last time you saw me, we looked at transcending craving and sensuality. The topic for the Dhamma talk today will be 7 myths about generosity. Again, this session I would encourage you to send in any questions you have by emailing me at peacetime.questions@gmail.com so that I can have a shot at answering them next time round. In my previous 2 sessions, I have already talked about aspects of the greed defilement, recommending a contentment to overcome greed and sequential uptrading towards transcendence to overcome sensuality. Today we come to the final aspect of the greed defilement, that of stinginess, being obsessed with wanting to hang on to things we already have. Before talking about generosity as an antidote to stinginess, I should explain that stinginess can mean, even when a person has sufficient earnings, that they fail to use their income for real benefit. It can include hesitation before giving, irritability when giving, or regret after having given. It can concern sharing with people around them, or in some cases even mean people scrimping and saving instead of spending necessary money on themselves. For example, when they're sick, they may prefer to buy cheap medicine, even though they know it's ineffective. When fruit is in season, they buy cheap second-rate fruit or take what is discarded. They use substandard equipment in their work. If they are unable to spend anything on themselves, it goes without saying that they will be unable to share with others, even stuff in excess to their needs. If someone asks to borrow something, they will lend it to them only after complaining a lot. Stinginess can concern material things and money, or it can concern knowledge. I might say up front that people in the United States, besides being lavish with their tips, are known to be one of the most generous countries in the world for their philanthropy. So any listeners in the US can probably laugh off any stereotypes I describe this session. But at the same time, you probably know individuals who may be quite stingy by their nature. Generally, we are more used to not giving than to being generous. But for the purpose of meditation, the concern we have with being stingy is not so much the needy folks left unaided, but the effect stinginess has on our own minds. The tendency to cling on to material things reflects a weakness of the mind. It reflects the mind's lack of freedom to break free of those things. If you were an expert meditator, you would see that when your mind clings on to things, it loses a lot of its brightness, almost as if it's being hijacked by some sort of black cloudiness, which once it's taken over your mind, will make it impossible for you to even think of letting go of those things. The more you think about your stuff, the more tightly you grasp onto those things. Stinginess tends to make the mind very small and very hard. As I said, it means that your mind is bound to certain things rather than being able to be directed towards the things you choose, making it hard to spread loving kindness or project goodwill for other sentient beings. Whenever stinginess arises in a person's mind, it will constrict the mind through anxiety and fear that their wealth will be stolen away. The mind, which is diffused by so many worries, has diminished strength and is easily irritated. Some myths concerning generosity can be quite uplifting. For example, we have the caricature of Ebenezer Scrooge from Dickens' A Christmas Carol, being haunted by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. Fortunately, that story is so famous it puts quite a lot of people off being stingy, at least at Christmas, or maybe they're just afraid of ghosts. Obviously, Ebenezer Scrooge was a person who regretted being unable to get rid of his stinginess. In the end, his redemption was to commit to being more generous, and he was able to let go of what he was clinging on to. But I've counted as many as 7 myths about generosity which are not so optimistic or accurate. For example, some claim that generosity is not necessary in the present day and age because we have a welfare state to ensure wealth is distributed fairly. Nonetheless, generosity remains a really important character quality for the world. It is a quality that brings people together instead of setting up barriers between them. If there was no generosity at the time when a child is born, they could not survive to maturity for sure, because at every turn in a child's life, when they are vulnerable, they need someone to turn to with a willingness to share with them. Welfare rights and laws can ensure a certain degree of security for children in need, but it can never cover everything. In the olden days, there was no infrastructure of welfare, and to this day, in many countries around the world, there's still none. In such cases, people are completely dependent on personal generosity. So neighbors look out for one another much more than you'd expect, especially if you assume that the authorities will take care if anything goes wrong. But it's not always the case. Even in so-called advanced economies, you find that if there's a national emergency, for example, the victims have to turn to one another because the authorities can't get there in time with the resources they need. So, generosity, in fact, never goes out of date in any society, family, or relationship in the world. If you ask what binds people together, then it is the generosity of one person towards the other, because actions tend to speak louder than words. But even though deep in our heart we may realize the importance of generosity for making life better, and even for us to feel better about ourselves, but there's generally a mysterious sense of reluctance about actually being generous. The second myth is that generosity is only for rich people. In fact, despite what I'll say later about celebrity philanthropy, there are many forms of generosity that don't cost money. So for those of you who are stingy because you think you can't afford to be generous, it should be remembered that many things can count as generosity that don't cost a penny. Up to this point, I have perhaps talked too much about donating money, but generosity might equally be giving someone a carefully considered word of advice to help that person get what they need, or using your influence so that someone gets the break they deserve in life. It might also mean forgiveness, saving the life of an insect that has fallen in a puddle, saying sadhu when you see someone else has achieved success, giving encouragement, volunteering, giving a helping hand, giving your time, being there for someone, or compassion more generally. A third myth comes from people who claim they already tried being generous and it didn't make them any happier. The problem with generosity is that most people know how to give things, but they don't know how to make it really generosity. The difference is that there's a knack to making generous acts uplifting. Because we've all had experiences in the past where we've tried to be generous, but it has backfired on us. So therefore we're put off trying to be generous anymore, and we hold on to those bad experiences, eclipsing any attempt we make to improve our generosity next time round. There was a theory popularized by Malcolm Gladwell that mastery of any skill takes 10,000 hours. whether it be a new language or a professional skill. Without going too much into specifics, you should ask yourself how much time you've put into being a generous person. Often we try it once or twice, but when it doesn't work out, we give up on it before coming anywhere near the point of mastery. Maybe it doesn't need 10,000 hours, but it may take a little bit more than 1 or 2 attempts. But there are a lot of potential misunderstandings to do with generosity, which means that despite our good intentions to be generous to others, we come up against things which tend to disappoint us in this experience, and hence we don't tend to get as much out of generosity as we should. So, if you want to learn to be generous, then it's important that we master the art of being generous in a way that it can actually bring back some sort of satisfaction to us. A fourth myth is that generosity should be secretive or consist of random acts of generosity. I think the point of this advice is to avoid being generous because you want to be seen to be generous, or doing it as some sort of public relations exercise. The advice is aimed to ensure that you have generosity based on a purer motivation. There's something to be said for that sort of advice if you're the sort of person whose self-esteem generally relies entirely on other people's opinions of you. As for random acts of generosity, mostly the advice is aimed at people who get more joy out of being spontaneous. But such randomness may fail to build up the habit of a generous character. A fifth misunderstanding about generosity is that we shouldn't expect anything in return. If it is to be proper generosity, that is. I think this advice should be corrected to not expecting anything material in return. In England, I used to organize a mini alms round for groups of Cub Scouts visiting the temple. Many of them were as young as 6 or 7 years old. Cub Scouts are supposed to understand what it means to do a good turn, and they even have awards for it. So I invited each Cub Scout to bring a grocery item for the temple community. Despite being in the Cub Scouts for several years, many of them had no experience of giving anything to anyone else before, apart from maybe birthday presents. So I asked them how it felt afterwards, and nearly every Cub Scout, despite their young age, described having a warm, fuzzy feeling inside as a result of their almsgiving that day. An actual physical feeling. It wasn't just feeling proud about being complimented by someone telling them, "Oh, what a good boy, you gave the monk a tin of soup." It was an actual experience arising directly within themselves. So, that's what you get in return for generosity, even though it may not be material. Generosity seems to affect you on a deeper level, and that something is more value than the thing which you've actually given. When you see that you put a smile on someone else's face, it somehow makes generosity all the more valuable. It should put a smile on your face to put a smile on someone else's face. So actually, generosity does do something for you as well. Introspecting, you feel good about yourself when you're able to do something good for someone else. Another myth is that generosity only counts for the poor and needy. Most people are only motivated to be generous when they feel sorry for others, or if others come over as being a pathetic charity case. So generosity comes out of a sense of almost looking down on the recipient, which is not a particularly positive state of mind. Often within Western society, what passes for generosity is a guilty response to feeling sorry for people who cannot help themselves. This is sad because it sullies the pure intention that should accompany generosity. And lastly, some claim that generosity opens the door to corruption, bribery, and toxic charity. Rather, I would argue that a personal generosity is important, but we should be selective about where we give, and perhaps be more savvy about the way we give, while at the same time campaigning on a social level to get more generous policies entered into law. Some people are generous, generally speaking, but their generosity falls down in certain situations. And again, if you know that yourself that you're like that, it may be pinpointing things where you can improve on your already generous nature. For example, some people are only generous towards certain groups. Some people only help others who are in their own social clique. Some people are racially prejudiced in their generosity as betrayed by microaggressions, put-downs, or sarcasm. Some will not help those who they are jealous of. Some only want to help people who appear to be pathetic. But don't assume all worthy recipients are going to be stereotypical charity cases, because sometimes a worthy recipient may be someone who is just your friend, someone who is, socially speaking, in a position no better or worse than you. Or perhaps comparable to the way some people support political parties and candidates because they respect them, it might be the case that a gift you give to someone might be motivated by admiration for that person, and this is an equally valid reason for giving as well. So at this time, we settle ourselves for some meditation. And if you'd like to find a comfortable sitting position for yourself now, as you listen to my instructions. So we start by closing our eyes very gently. Closing our eyes in the same way we would close them to go to sleep. So not squeezing our eyes closed, just letting our upper and lower eyelashes touch gently together. And to relax our body, we start by taking a few deep breaths to ourselves. Breathing into the full volume of our lungs, and then breathing slowly and smoothly out again. Once again, we breathe the cool, refreshing air from around us. And when we breathe out, we may imagine that we're letting go of any of the worries and concerns normally filling our mind. Meditation is mostly about our mind. But to put ourselves in a place where we can work with the mind, we need to attend to the relaxation of our body first of all. And we do this by what's known as a body scan, which means scanning down through the whole of our body, relaxing each and every muscle as we go. So starting at our forehead, we relax any tension in the muscles there. We relax our eyebrows and our eyelids. Checking once again that the way we've closed our eyes is as gentle as possible. We let the muscles of our face become soft. We relax our jaw, taking special care that we've not clenched our teeth together. And we move on down to our neck and let our shoulders drop to their natural height. From there we relax our arms, our forearms, and then our hands and fingers, so that our hands are resting only very gently in our lap. Continuing on downwards, we relax the whole of our torso, our chest, trunk, and our abdomen, especially the muscles across our belly. Before moving on down to relax our legs, all the way to our feet and our toes, till there's no remaining part of our body with any sort of stress or tension anymore. If we notice knots of tension remaining anywhere, then we do our best to relax them as far as possible. Almost to the point that our whole body seems to disappear or melt away into the atmosphere around us. Allowing us to turn our attention inward to the feeling inside us, that sense of warmth and well-being and of inner space. Something which by any other name we would call our state of mind. And even our mind needs a little bit of mood setting to ensure the success of a meditation ahead. The way to do that is to put aside any worries or concerns that are weighing on your mind. Any regrets from your past, any plans for the future, leaving nothing but the present moment, leaving nothing but the here and now. Bringing our awareness back within the space of our body, to a safe place, a safe haven for the mind. Some people have described it like being a bunker that protects the mind. Because for as long as our mind is located on the inside, and is somehow buffered against the impacts of the outside world. And inside ourselves we conjure up a sense of happiness and joy in the mind. If happiness and joy don't come automatically to mind, you might cast your mind back to a time in your life when you felt truly happy. Thinking not so much about the place or the situation, but thinking about the feeling it gave you on the inside. That warm, fuzzy feeling. And conjuring up the same feeling within yourself now, almost as if it were tiny particles of happiness and joy, growing and spreading inside of yourself until it fills the whole of your body and mind, leaving no space inside yourself for any other sort of thought. And when you feel relaxed and refreshed, both in body and in mind, very gently and using no effort at all, you can imagine that inside your body is just an empty space, a hollow cavity with no organs or tissues, muscles or bones. As if your whole body has been transformed into a sort of transparent bubble with nothing on the inside. And within this empty space of your body and mind, you can cast your mind back to that picture of the shining sun which you had a few moments ago. Or alternately, the full moon, a star, or perhaps a diamond in your mind. But this time we're relocating that imaginary picture to bring it within the space of our own body. We don't worry too much if the actual picture is not very clear. Even if it's vague, we accept it anyway. And for about half the people who meditate, it's more of a feeling than a picture. We may guide that object down within the space of our body by how it feels, the warmth or the shape and texture of the object. And we bring that object slowly downwards within the space of our body, almost as if we were slowly breathing the object down to the deepest point of our breath, or as if we were gently swallowing the object down within ourselves to reach the very deepest point of our stomach. And once it reaches that point, or a point that feels comfortable for us down inside ourselves, we gently maintain that inner picture at the center of ourselves as continuously as we can, for as long as we can, not letting our attention slip away anywhere else if we can help it. If we find our attention wandering away, then it's not the end of the world. We just bring our attention back again to the inner object. And if the inner object disappears, then we just think of a new one. As for the possible problem of there being thoughts in the mind, if the thoughts are at a low level, then often we can just ignore those thoughts, treat them like unwanted guests, to the point they will eventually die down into silence all by themselves, almost like guests that go away if you don't bother giving them too much hospitality. Go away even without a confrontation. But if you're one of those people who tend to have a lot of thoughts going on in the mind, then it may be the case that you need to make use of that traditional mantra, the words Samma Arahang, or equivalent. Not saying the words out loud, but hearing them silently coming up from the center of your body, as if that were the source of the sound. The same place that you see the inner object or feel the inner object is the place where the sound comes from. Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, over and over again, lightly, gently, continuously, leading the mind deeper at the center of the body, while at the same time freeing the mind of any extraneous thoughts, until the mind comes closer and closer to an approximation of silence within. In the beginning it may seem like there are a lot of thoughts with a few gaps in between, but later the gaps will become longer, until the thoughts are less numerous than the gaps themselves. And you start to appreciate a sense of connection with the center of yourself. As some people observe, if they observe very gently, not trying to force anything, not trying to hurry anything along, observing with a very light and gentle attention, it may be possible for the inner object to start to change and transform on its own. In which case you just follow the inner experience. Follow the way it evolves without interfering, without changing it back to what it was before. Always focusing at the center of whatever you can see or feel within yourself. And the byproduct of that inner transformation will be a mind that is gradually calmer, which will gradually shed the negativity, giving rise to a sense of inner knowledge, a sense of mastery, a sense of clarity from within, which seems to cleanse us from the inside. Change is something for good within ourselves. So for now we focus gently at the center of ourselves, focusing with the same lightness of a feather floating down to touch on the surface of some water, or with the same care that we might use to thread a needle. No hurry, no force, just a sense of lightness. And the lightness will be rewarded by an increasing sense of joy from within. Don't forget, if your mind wanders off onto other things each time you realize, simply bring your attention back again to the center of your body as before. Whether it's 100 times or 1,000 times your mind wanders off, just keep on bringing it back each time. And you'll start to notice that from a mind that spent more time wandering than it spent in one place, little by little the mind will start to become settled more than it wanders. And you get a feeling of connection with the center of your body building up. The inner object disappears, you can think of a new one. If it changes, just follow it in its new form. Always at the center of whatever you see or feel. And with meditation, practice makes perfect. It's something we need to work at, just as we might work at a new language or a new sporting skill. It's the things that we do regularly that we become adept at. For some things like physical exercise 2 or 3 times a week will tend to keep you fit. But for meditation, a little every day is the best way forward for those who find that meditation seems to be doing them good. We can find a period of just 20 minutes to sit down to meditate each day, maybe early in the morning, maybe last thing at night. Relax our body, relax our mind, focus gently at our center and clear the mind of thoughts. At a time of the day when our energy levels are not too low, and when we're unlikely to be interrupted by other things. If we can manage to do a little each day, then we'll see some sort of improvement in the ease with which we can meditate. We'll find we're able to go further in the same length of time and achieve a greater sense of peace. There'll be a gradual accumulation of peacefulness within ourselves. Especially toward the end of the practice, there'll be a sense of well-being that builds up inside ourselves. A sense of calm that seems to be charged up within our mind. And it's a sense of calm that stays with us even as we get up from our meditation to do other things. We still feel calm from our meditation, as if it's something we carry around with us. When we're new to meditation, sometimes the sense of calm will wear off after a while, especially when we come across things in our lives that are irritating or annoying to us. But as we become more adept to meditation, the sense of calm will be more robust, more resilient. It will stay with us even though we encounter challenges in life, until eventually there will be a seamless connection both inside and outside of our practice. While we've got our eyes closed, and it's called a meditation practice, but while we've got our eyes open doing other things, Maintaining that sense of calm is known as mindfulness. So meditation and mindfulness together can bring us a maintenance of well-being throughout our day. And this is what we're aiming for by trying to maintain a regular practice within our lives. So for now we carry on, keeping our mind on track at the center of ourselves, lightly and gently, using only the very lightest of touch to keep the mind in place. Each to our own practice, just for a few more moments now until we come to the appropriate time. So if you'd like to come to the end of your meditation for today, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position and gently finish your practice. So to continue with our theme of stinginess and generosity as its antidote, it turns out that amongst celebrities, it is considered quite trendy to practice philanthropy. And we can take a little interlude now for some celebrity name-dropping concerning acts of kindness. So first up we have Stormzy, a British rapper who gave £500,000 in college scholarships to disadvantaged black students. Then there's Nicki Minaj, who helped out around 30 fans with student loans, debts, and equipment. And in 2017, through her pastor, she funded drinking water wells, a computer center, a tailoring institute, and reading programs for different villages in India. Chrissy Teigen donated more than $5,000 for a fan to go to beautician school. Taylor Swift, who's been dubbed the Queen of Good Deeds, gave $50,000 to help with the leukemia treatment for one of her fans, $5,000 for a crash victim, again one of her fans, and she raised more than $1 million for flood relief in Louisiana in 2016. The late George Michael worked with major HIV, children famine relief charities. He gave $20,000 to a couple for IVF treatment, although I'm not sure what the karmic fruit of that would be. And he gave $6,500 to a student nurse who he met as a barmaid who was in debt. Sandra Bullock has apparently donated more than $5 million in natural disaster relief since 2001, but most memorably helped a guy who was made homeless after having been a Beverly Hills hotel manager for some time, and set him up, taking him off the street with a $5,000 donation. In a similar vein, Irish actor Colin Farrell helped a homeless man in Toronto by taking him on a $2,100 shopping spree to buy clothes and a sleeping bag, and eventually ended up renting him a room so that he could live there. And Dolly Parton raised $9 million for victims of the Gatlinburg wildfires, and her Dollywood Foundation has scholarships which encourages millions of high school students to read by giving them a book every month, and she gives a lot of scholarships as well. Someone told me that she gives parcels of land to people who ask for it too, so if you happen to like land in Tennessee, that might be something that is worth looking into. If you're a cynical person, you might say, well, what do you expect? These folks are rich, they can afford to be generous, or maybe they just do it to get a tax break. But from a more positive perspective, there's a sense in which everyone should try to be generous, whether they are rich or not. And sometimes it's more important for people who find it hard to give to actually learn how to give, even if the amount they give is slightly less spectacular. Some factors that add satisfaction to giving, even though what you give may not be large amounts, include that you have earned what it cost in an honest way. If a gift is something you earned honestly, then it somehow makes it count for more. It's not just like something which you swiped from the public park. Also, it can help if it is something that you know will truly be appreciated by others. Giving a gift where you know it's going to be appreciated is generally smart thinking from the point of view of being generous. If you don't trust the recipient deeply, you might start by giving them something that you know won't be used in an unintended way. Because some people give a handful of pennies to someone begging on a street corner, thinking they're going to use the money to get themselves back on their feet. However, it ends up getting spent on their next bottle of whiskey. In such a case, it would be more satisfying from the point of view of generosity cultivation to bring that person on the street corner food or clothes that they can't sell to finance an addiction. So sometimes being a little bit smarter in your generosity or doing your research first can help to avoid regret at a later date. On the subject of later regrets, you should also give moderately rather than bankrupting yourself by giving more than you can afford. Otherwise, at the very least, you will come into conflict with your significant others. And this can especially be the case in the way you remember people in your will or disinherit them, which could also be considered a form of posthumous generosity. If you work on the quality of your mind before you make a gift, put your mind at the center to make a wish first, then somehow it will also give more meaning to the act of generosity, even though it's not otherwise particularly lavish. Practicing uplifting generosity without coming into conflict with yourself or others can mean getting your economics in order. Buddhism is a religion which in certain circles is blamed for being rather frugal, or worse, having a flat earth view of the world that shuns technology and financial status. But this stereotype is actually a little bit of a misunderstanding because poverty has never been advocated by Buddhism. Rather, if you ask how Buddhism would regard the way we use the wealth we have, it would advise expenditure with a clear aim in mind. So, rather than frittering away wealth on things which perhaps don't actually bring any ultimate benefit to us in life, we would try to focus on things that actually bring satisfaction on a deeper level in life. The diagram on the slide is one way of looking at how you can be more focused in the way you have an attitude to your wealth. It's been nicknamed the 4 chambers of a millionaire's heart, because if you have nothing but these 4 qualities, even on a low income, you will eventually manage to achieve wealth. These 4 factors are in fact nothing very fancy or mystical. They're just what the man in the street needs to practice to get by and enjoy happiness in this life. They say basically that if you spend less than you earn, then you end up with something left over to save. That is basic math for you. By following this plan, then having something left over allows you to make generosity part of your life in a more regular way. Generosity means sharing with others, but it's said to be only one part of the whole process of becoming a generous person. For the sharing to be uplifting, a person who is wealthy enough to be able to share needs also to be a person who is diligent and honest in the way they acquire their wealth. Secondly, most people who are lucky enough to be wealthy generally need to be quite careful with their assets. They can't afford to just throw money from the windows. As a person careful enough about money to be able to practice generosity, one needs to be careful about stewardship of wealth, so that it is not lost, stolen, or frittered away. It is a part of being a person savvy enough to manage their assets properly. You need to look after what you manage to earn carefully. A third factor is the company you keep. Your friends' attitudes will affect how much of your assets you have left at the end of the day, because so-called friends are only friendly to you in some cases because they think they can help themselves to any wealth which you've built up for yourself. So you also need to be careful about the friends you have. With all those lottery winners, they want to keep their newfound wealth a secret because they're afraid their friends are going to find out, and that doesn't say very much for who their friends are. It's said that you should scrutinize the nature of your friends because friends have a big influence on the way you see the world. We tend to want to copy the things we see our friends do. And if the sort of friends we have are ones who are extravagant in their spending habits, or maybe go buying things that are of no use, you will want to be like them to keep up with the Joneses. Then that will affect the way you get enjoyment out of what you have or what you spend. So it's said that before you think about how you're going to spend your money, you should get yourself a sensible set of friends first, otherwise you will lose sight of your priorities in the way you use your wealth. And lastly, when you eventually come to spend your hard-earned income, you need to be able to spend within your means. If you can manage all four factors and you have quite a lot left over at the end of the day, part of which you can channel into your practice of generosity, the way you spend should be within your means. So if you're not very well off, you shouldn't go around like a big spender. But if you are better off, maybe you can afford to spend more on things which are maybe not just a benefit for yourself, but maybe for the benefit of people around you too. Part of giving in a way that doesn't cause conflict with oneself or others is budgeting. Some people are so fond of generosity that they actually plan how much they would like to set aside for charitable good works. In some religions, they even set a target for you. In Islam, zakat is set at 2.5% of your income. From the point of view of Buddhism, they try to work out the answer by drawing pie charts. And this pie chart has 5 segments to it. And you shouldn't take the 5 parts as meaning 20% because they might not be equal. It's just that they all should be represented. But supposing your income is the whole amount in this diagram, then what you would actually use on a day-to-day basis would be just one of these 5 segments. And if you are working, and this advice is from a time when there was no welfare state, then obviously you've got your working capital, which is to do with the turnover in your business. On top of this, you need to put aside something in case of emergencies, just in case your medical insurance doesn't cover everything. And for the third segment, if you want to keep your friends, then you need to put aside something for maintaining friendship. Even things like being hospitable to friends visiting you from out of town. They go into more detail on business finances, which can be divided into your immediate needs, business emergencies, so that's not the medical ones, and reinvestment. And they actually put figures on that. 50% is recommended to be reinvested. Because not everyone reinvests the same amount. It turns out that Chinese people tend to reinvest a lot more, for example, than Indian people. I was once in the United Arab Emirates, and they invited a whole lot of Indian people to set up businesses there. But the moment the Indians started to get a lot of money, they sent it all back to India. So the Emiratis weren't very keen on Indians anymore because they had given all these businesses special visas to come and work in their country in the hope of stimulating wealth and a better economy. However, all the Indians did was to line up to send remittances back to India. So the latest idea in the UAE is to invite over a whole bunch of Chinese people because they do like to reinvest their money in their businesses. And for the last segment, there are financial tributes, so-called, of various sorts. And this is of particular interest to us in this session because it's where generosity comes in. Tributes towards your extended family are something we already heard about in some of my most recent sessions. And there are tributes needed for us to provide hospitality. There are tributes for the deceased, so performing merits on behalf of maybe friends and relatives who've passed away. You might think of this as funeral contributions, but it may go beyond that. And of course, there are tributes in the form of taxes. I think in the US, they would probably take a larger chunk of your pie than just the 20% shown here. And I think you find it's not optional either because they take it from you even before you get it. There's also the tribute towards something known as customary religion, which means the things which people in your locality give importance to, like, for example, having a stock of candies available for kids who come trick-or-treating on Halloween night. Tributes can also mean supporting meditation infrastructure, which would be included in aspects of generosity. So it's said that if you value generosity, then you should be asking yourself whether you've covered at least these 5 factors yet or not. Or is the factor of working capital almost taking over your whole budget? As I said, generosity is always an optional part of life, but it is a sensible option if you hope to cultivate the generous side of your character. So in conclusion, apart from helping to uproot stinginess, generosity brings many benefits to the giver. Firstly, generosity has a big effect on the quality of your mind. And if you've been meditating for a while, then, as I've said in previous sessions, small things can have big effects on the quality of your mind. Even small things like having the light on or off when meditating, or what meditation mat you sit on, can have an effect on the quality of your mind. But also, the aspect of meditation is affected by how generous you are. If you have a generous character, then it has a big effect on the quality of your mind. If you think about the English term, a big-hearted person, then if you meditate, you find out that generosity has literally that effect on your meditation. It tends to allow your mind to be more able to expand towards others, almost as if you encompass others in the breadth of your awareness. So, if you find your mind is rather compact and unyielding, then it may be something to do with a nascent little factor called stinginess, which may be affecting the quality of your mind. It may not happen all the time. It may happen only in certain circumstances. It may happen only for certain things. But for as long as it's there, it will cause the mind to become shriveled and unresponsive to your efforts in meditation. Secondly, generosity gives the mind freedom from the control of material objects, while stinginess is a threat to your ability to really gain freedom of mind. When we are talking about meditation, freedom is something which we are aiming for eventually. So little by little, if we find things that we can do to improve on the quality of mind, then it's interesting to explore generosity as a way to contribute indirectly to freeing the mind. The third benefit to the giver is that generosity will light up the mind. All it needs is for the thought of generosity to cross your mind, for the stream of positivity to penetrate the center of the mind. Such a thought of generous action in the mind is like hitting the on switch. If that same person does something generous, giving away some part of that wealth, which is the source of their possible anxiety, then stinginess is suddenly shed from the mind. Positivity arises in its place, and this lights up the mind for a while. The radiance gradually accumulates in the mind, and the brightness or the positivity consolidates in the mind as generous deeds are performed more regularly. Brightness arises in the mind and darkness recedes. In that moment, the feeling that you don't want to give anything will have disappeared from the mind. And fourthly, generosity dispels possible anxieties because you don't waste mental bandwidth on possessiveness, worry about status symbols, or frustration about preventing your wealth from disappearing. And lastly, generosity opens up the heart and mind to providence. The success and happiness that are the result of this positivity replenish the mind, tuning you into a wavelength that will attract good things, a little bit like the law of attraction made popular by Rhonda Byrne in her book The Secret. And it is said that if you give a little, you will receive a little. If you give a lot, then you will receive a lot. If you give something special, you will receive something special. If you give more than anyone else has ever given, then you will receive more than anyone else has ever received. If you give miraculously, then you will receive miraculous and unbelievable things. So, in conclusion, if you can look beyond the 7 myths concerning generosity, you will be able to make sure your generous actions are uplifting and really serve to reduce the stinginess in your mind. But if you are going to become a charitable benefactor, make sure that your giving aligns with all the characteristics that I mentioned, whether it be giving with optimism in the favorable outcome of a good deed, giving with respect rather than looking down on the recipient, giving in a timely manner, giving with a thought to help the recipient, and giving without coming into conflict with yourself or others. So, somewhere in there, hopefully there's useful advice for ways your generosity can bring happiness to others and, on a deeper level, happiness to yourself, to keep that hard nutshell of stinginess away, so that one day you can appear in the lineup with all the Nicki Minaj's and Sandra Bullocks of the world. So we turn now to answer the questions sent in by viewers, and this week the question comes from Trang of Orange County, California. Here comes the question. I know sharing and supporting the temple and Sangha community is a good thing, and we should all try to do it. But I am put off by some supporters who are always reminding me to say sadhu or calling things a big boon, which makes it seem like Dhammakaya Buddhists are only donating or doing things in order to pray for something in their life. I do understand that it's a good thing to donate, but I wonder if I'm uncomfortable about others' meritorious deeds because I don't have the ability to donate as much as they do. It makes me think lay people at DMC focus too much on donating, and it is unnatural to talk about merits all the time. For me, when I do good deeds like donating, I just do it, and I don't think it has to come back as good things in my life. What should I do when I don't feel completely happy when I see DMC laypeople donating a lot and talking about their merits? Hi Trang, and thank you for your question, which fits well with the topic of my Dhamma talk today. I understand how you feel about the behavior of some enthusiastic DMC members, especially always saying sadhu and putting a lot of emphasis on giving donations. Some DMC people behave a lot like evangelicals in this way, and personally, I think it is inappropriate for the Western world, although a lot of Asian people seem to be okay with it. I think it's important to remember that merit is the feeling of joy inside you. It's not something you can quantify like the price of a donation. Although there may be big boons or merits and maybe medium and small boons, ultimately it is how it makes us feel on the inside which determines how much actual merit is deposited in our heart. Merits are useful because they help to clear away difficulties in our life that we cannot cope with by other methods. For example, sickness that a doctor can't diagnose, or getting through a risky business deal without being ripped off. Personally, I do believe merit helps in this way because I've encountered examples of this firsthand. Some merits are stronger than others in my experience, especially the offering of sustenance to the Buddha on the first Sunday of the month, known as Puja Khao Pra, or making the Buddha images on the pagoda in Thailand. As for donations, the question you need to ask yourself each time you plan to make a donation is, how much would I need to give for me to feel happiness and joy about this donation? One important factor for merit to happen and give you joy is that you should be happy and willing to participate without feeling pressured. If the answer is, I would be happier not to give something on this occasion, then you should not give it, or you should just give an amount that does not matter to you. As for saying sadhu back to people who are always telling you about their merits, I think it's not a big problem because it doesn't actually cost anything to say sadhu back. Maybe just regard the messages about all the merits from other people as just being friendly and regard them as FYI. I should add that many people in DMC try to have a part in every merit announced by the main temple in Thailand, however small, so as not to miss the so-called last train to Nirvana. And this is great if you can afford it, but otherwise I would advise choosing a sort of merit donation that you know brings you joy, and do that one regularly. It may be bringing food for monks on Wednesday or Saturday, or releasing fish. It can even be practicing precepts or meditating, because all these produce merit without involving donations of money. It takes a while to trust in merit coming from donating money, and you cannot hurry the process. It can take many years for it to kick in, so in the meantime you should try to find merits that you can trust. So let me just finish up with a couple of news updates, one about temple support and the other my usual PSA about the availability of meditation teaching in English. At the moment, as you probably know, despite certain relaxation in the social distancing regulations in California, the activities at the temple are still pretty much limited to those we can share online, as the temple buildings remain closed to the public, with no monks going outside the temple gates and no community members coming into the temple building, at least until the risk of the pandemic has passed. We continue to remain cautious to avoid a second wave. Nonetheless, we continue to receive so-called curbside or drive-through donations of food and requisites, usually between 9:30 and 11 a.m. every day. Anyone wanting to make a contribution to the temple, as long as you wear a face mask and keep your distance, can visit the temple between 9:30 and 11 a.m. each day, and at least 2 monks will be waiting at the temple gate dressed in PPE to receive the donation and give a blessing. If there's time to spare, the monk may lead a short meditation for the people who are gathered there. On Wednesdays and Saturday mornings, it will always be monks on duty who can speak some English. In the meantime, although all of us hope the present situation will not go on too long, the silver lining for the crisis is that there are additional ways which temple devotees can show their support for the temple without attending in person. If it's not convenient for you to visit the temple, don't fret, as you can still make a donation to help keep the temple lights on by mailing checks to the temple address or by making a bank transfer. Online transfers can be made by Venmo or Zelle. The special merits arising for those practicing generosity in these times of adversity are that you will have a life free of obstacles and danger, you will gain mastery of all forms of knowledge, prosper in your duties, have special insight into Dhamma teachings, attain purity with ease, breaking free of the defilements in the mind. You will gain wealth on worldly, spiritual, and transcendental levels, allowing you to pursue perfections with ease all the way to the attainment of the utmost Dharma, and the whole temple would like to rejoice in your merit on this occasion. Meditation is particularly valuable in this COVID era to help us cope with the dysphoria of the new normal. And in this respect, here at the temple, although there are still no face-to-face teaching sessions for the interim, you can access Dhamma teachings in English at the YouTube channel called Peace Point Meditation or the Facebook page of Peace Point Meditation. either live on Thursday evenings and Sunday mornings or on demand after the event. For those of you who've been following my talks, you may be interested to subscribe to a YouTube channel which I have recently set up in my own name, which can be found by searching on YouTube for Pratt Nicholas Thanissaro, where I've systematized my own teachings and cut them down to the bare essentials. Meanwhile, Peace Breaks are broadcast every evening between 7 and 8 p.m. from Friday to Wednesday. For the benefit of families listening in, there's also a special show for children in English known as Shining Stars that goes out between 7:30 and 8 p.m. on every Monday evening with bedtime stories and meditation short enough to keep the attention of younger listeners. And outside the live streams and on-demand programming, there is also the MindGem app, which you can download for free, allowing you to listen to meditation and Dhamma talks in English on your cell phone or even when you're offline. So this session we have looked at the topic of 7 myths about generosity. For my next session online with you, which will, fingers crossed, be a week on Sunday morning and a week on Thursday evening, we'll be moving on to look at the subject of compassion. And for good measure, I would like to remind viewers that even better than posting thank you or great talk or thatu in the broadcast comments, you can email your questions about meditation or what you've heard in the lecture to the address you can see spelled out in the slide. And I will do my best to answer these on my next session. In the meantime, try to stay healthy, avoid recklessness or complacency in the face of the virus, maintain a positive mood, speak only positive words, forgive others, extend good wishes to others, and meditate daily. Try not to get caught up in any of the myths about generosity, and on the contrary, cultivate generosity wisely to overcome any residual stinginess in your mind. So today, this is me, Pratt Nicholas Thanissaro, signing off for this session. So long, folks, and stay safe.